Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel Custom Carving and Epoxy UK. And in this video, we attempt the sort of cloudy Petri effect that I've seen in a few other videos. And I'll be honest, all doesn't go to plan. But we may have just found the way to make a perfect storm in a pendant. So make sure you watch till the end. Let's get straight into it. So here we are back in the workshop, getting gloved up and respirator on. I need to get larger gloves because these aren't the easiest to put on. But no, it's going to be an interesting experiment today. We're going to try and recreate the cloudy Petri effect, but we're going to try and do it with a bit of a difference. So we'll see if it works and stay tuned till the end to find out. So I've got this glow in the dark paste that's come from Timu. I've also got a resin art metallic paste and another one. So one purple, one blue. I thought the three would go well together. And the glow in the dark pigment paste was supposed to be blue, although it looks more green to me. So let me know in comments if that's what it should look like or if I've just been sent a faulty batch. We will see as we go on. So getting everything ready, first things first, just going to mix up some resin. I've got my large jewelry mold out and I've also got a spear coaster mold as a tester. As what we're going to be doing here, as these pigments are slightly heavier than when we've done Petri effect with alcohol inks, we're going to have to add alcohol to them to lighten them up so that hopefully we still get something resembling the Petri effect, but with these heavier pigments. So I think I'm going to be mixing up around about 6 ounces here. In fact, no, 4 ounces, just to see if that fills the mold and gives me enough of a sample for a tester pot. And you're going to need some spare resin to mix up the pastes as well, so that you get it to the right consistency. That's why I've got these 3 pots at the top ready to mix those colours. Now the resin's mixed, just going to put it in my Resiners bubble removal machine. If you've not seen my previous video with this, we have got a discount code for resiners.com, which is ccukresin, and I would highly recommend this piece of kit. Doesn't take up a lot of space, not very loud, and it removes all of those pesky bubbles from the epoxy. And watch these bubbles disappear as we finish the 5-minute cycle and I release the air back out. Amazing bit of kit, and it always gives me crystal clear epoxy. So now, whilst the resin's just degassing a little bit, going to mix up the pastes, because if we just put this heavier pigment paste into the resin, we know it's going to sink and we're not going to get any Petri effect, which is what we're after. So just organizing things out now. And we're going to go with one of the metallic pigment paste first. So going to go with this purple one first. As you can see, it's a bit glittery. It's got a bit of an opaque texture. And all I'm going to do is add a little bit of this paste, a little bit of resin. This is the purple. And then this is the apparently blue glow in the dark paste, but it looks more yellowy green to me. So we'll see if that actually works. Just pouring a little bit of that resin into each of the little pots, ready to mix up the pigment and hopefully thin it down with some alcohol. The whole point here is with alcohol inks, you don't need to thin it down because it's so thin anyway, and then your Sinker White works to create that Petri effect. However, if you did that just with the resin pigments, they would all just simply drop to the bottom of the mold and you wouldn't get the same effect. And remember, with any of these pigment pastes that you use, you only need a tiny bit. So I'm just going to fill up the cavities I want in the mold as well. Going to speed it up for you. And now that's done, it's time to start mixing up some of these pigment pastes. So initially, I'm just adding a very tiny bit of this pigment paste to the resin, literally just dipping one of these popsicle sticks in and using the end of it. I'm also going to be adding just a drop of this ocean white as I'm not sure how transparent or opaque these pigments are when mixed. So I'm just going to add one drop of that to it. And then stir it up. And I'm going to speed up this process so you don't have to watch me doing it with all of them. But basically, I'm going to do the same for each three of the pigments. And decided it was just a good idea. Now these little tiny surface bubbles have risen to the top to degas them and burn them off with my lighter. Now this is just 99.9% alcohol in this bottle, and I'm going to start off by dripping 10 drops of alcohol in each of these, giving them a stir, and then putting a drop of it on this coaster mold as a test. What you want is it to slightly separate and not sink. And you're going to have to just keep on testing it until you think you've got it at the right consistency. But this is all guesswork. So the key is you don't want it to sink, because if it sinks, it's just going to blob on the bottom of the mold. And you want it to slightly spread on the surface to give that Petri effect chance before you go in with a stir. So just repeating the process with all of these. Then going to put a little dot in the coaster mold to see how well I think that the consistency is, or whether it needs more alcohol. At this point, they were all still sinking reasonably quickly, so I decided to add another 5 drops of alcohol to each and give them another stir. Now I'm just moving this coaster mold to hopefully give you a better view of what I mean. So just literally a small dab of it on the top. And again, you don't want to do it from any height or anything like that. But at this point, decided it still looked too heavy and it looked like it was going to sink. So I just wanted to add a little bit more alcohol into each of those to thin it out even more. So decided to add another 5 drops. So we're up to sort of 20 drops of alcohol now in each one of these. Give them a stir again and test again. And this is where genuinely, depending on what resin you're using, what paste you're using, possibly even what alcohol you're using, is going to be different for everyone. So at this point, I'd gone up to 20 drops of alcohol for each of them, and it was still slightly sinking and not fully giving me the effect that I wanted. So decided to add a little bit more alcohol to each. So we're up to 25 drops of alcohol per paste at this point. And again, this is where you just have to go with your judgment and decide whether or not you think it's right. At this point, they weren't sinking, so that was that was something that was good. But again, what I realised afterwards is the depth in this coaster mould wasn't as deep as some of the pendant moulds. So again, I don't know if that would make a difference in how well the pigments float or if they're going to sink or not. But at least they weren't sinking at this point. But this is where it is just all guesswork, and it's purely your judgment as to whether or not you think it's right, whether or not you think it's going to sink to the bottom. I'm just leaving this for a minute to decide if it's going to sink or not, and then decided to add a little bit more alcohol. So we're up to 25 drops in each at the moment. And then testing again on this test piece. And what you want is to see the pigment slightly expand and then contract back in is what you're looking for, and not to sink. And at this point, just giving it a closer look, making sure it's not sinking. And at this point, I was reasonably happy that it was at the right consistency. Everything one last torch just to make sure there was no little tiny bubbles on the surface. And now the fun part, dripping it into the pendants. And what you want to do is just very small drops on the surface. You don't want to push it in or anything like that because that's going to promote it to sink. You just want to rest it on that surface. And I'm going to repeat this process with all three colours to get a few dots of each colour in each. And then the plan is to just leave it for the usual sort of 20 minutes and come back and do a stir. And this is where, if you look at those hearts, you can just start to see the white has started to sink. So it's the wrong consistency. And I think at this point, I knew for the ones that I'd already put it in, it was too late. So I just persisted, continued with the purple and the blue. But I'd realized at this point that, again, I should have probably added even more alcohol to that white. Then I realized that I hadn't put any white in these six yet, so I might actually be able to recover a few of these pieces and get the effect that I want. But do you know what? If you're halfway through a project and things don't seem to be going right, just persist, continue with the project and see what the end results are. You put the time in, you've put the effort in. What are you going to do at this point? Throw everything away and have a real mess on your hands? You might as well just continue and see what happens. realizing that I hadn't put any white into these 6 yet, I decided to add another 5 drops of alcohol and see if that made a difference. But again, I probably didn't factor in at this point, it'd been stood there for about 5 minutes, so some of the alcohol will have evaporated. And it seemed a better consistency at this point. Um, and again, I was hopeful that it wouldn't sink. So I was hopeful that we'd get at least 6 with the sort of velvety Petri effect that I was after, even if the others didn't turn out like that. So again, just lightly putting a few drops of the white or glow in the dark pigment paste on and seeing what happened. And then decided I didn't want to waste any of the resin, so I might as well pour all the rest of the pigments into this tester mold that I'd done for a coaster and see what happened. But if you're still with us at this point, please like and subscribe to the channel. We've got over 6,200 subscribers now, which is absolutely amazing. And do me a favor, like the video, share the video, put a comment in it. It all helps the algorithm and it helps us grow this community. That's what I want to do. It's nice to see that we've got some people in the community commenting now. That's what I want. We should learn. We're all in this together, and let's see what happens. Let's see what results we all get, and let's learn from each other. So, like and subscribe to the channel. There's going to be a lot more content coming, including using nail powders in Petri Effect, which I have already done. I just need to edit the video, and that'll be coming out later on this week. We've also just launched our shop on Etsy as well. So hopefully, if there's any of the pendants that you like in the video, they will be up there for sale within a couple of weeks. I always like to leave it a couple of weeks so that the pendants fully harden before we sell any of them. But if there's a pendant that you've liked in a video within a couple of weeks, hopefully that and some of the ones that we make off video as well will be listed in the shop. So you'll be able to purchase a piece of this jewelry if you like it. And don't forget, all links to whatever we use are usually in the description, including any discount codes we've got for any of the suppliers that we work with, which gives you the ability to save yourself some money. So click on the links. It helps the channel and hopefully it saves you some money as well at the same time. And I decided, as I'd already been working on this for probably about 15, 20 minutes at this point, I was only going to leave it sort of 20 minutes before the swirl. And here we are 20 minutes later. Now I'm just looking at this and I can already see that the white seems to have blobbed, seems to have sunk to the bottom. So we're not going to get the effect that I wanted here, but I decided to go with a swirl anyway and see what happens. It's got the right stringy effect, which is what I wanted. But the problem I think I've got here is that we know, well, I know that these colours have already pretty much blobbed at the bottom. So it'd be interesting to see what effect we do actually come out with once the swirl's gone in and once we come back. So just swirling these round, no particular pattern, going from the outside in. And wait till you see the results at the end. I am so glad that I persisted with this. Even though it's not the effect I wanted, I think it is a really, really cool effect. This is actually one of my favorite bits when you're trying to do the Petri effect is coming back after that 20-minute wait and putting your design in, because whatever you put in now, in one way or another, will affect the piece and the overall appearance of the piece. And this is something I'm hoping to experiment with a lot more over the next few weeks and see just how detailed a design we can get in there or what different effects we can get just with the swirl. As soon as you break the surface of that resin, it creates an impact on pretty much every droplet that you've put in there. And it's amazing some of the effects I've seen people get just from doing swirls in different ways. And hopefully you'll agree at the end of this simple effect here has still created some really beautiful results. And you can just see there before I swirl, the white has already blobbed. By blobbed, I mean that it's sunk and it's already touching the other side of the mould, so the front of your piece essentially. And I thought, do you know what? They could be ruined, but I've come this far. I'm going to persist and see what happens. Now it's just a case of leaving them for 24 hours, ready for the demould. So excited to see what we get 24 hours. Right, time for the demould. But looking at the underside, we've had blobbing, I think, on all of the pieces, which is a bit disappointing. But it's one of those things, you know, with resin, you keep trying until you get it right. This is the spare coaster that we had. It's made a pretty cool sort of design if you hold it up to the light, but yeah, it's not giving me too much hope for these. So let's see how we get on. I'll start off with these small pieces. And we did get a bit of a Petri effect, but I think the blobbing has unfortunately spoiled it. It will still be cool to see whether these glow in the dark or not, but I'm not convinced. But as you can see, we got a bit of the Petri effect going off, which was great, but we got blobbing. And I think that's going to be a case for all of these pieces. So it will be a case of better luck next time, I think. Again, these two, really nice, but, and I quite like the effect it's made, but it just wasn't what we were going for. I'm still going to see if these do glow in the dark, as that was also part of the experiment. But I think what happened is I didn't add quite enough alcohol. Again, I still like the effect that we've got. It's almost a bit of a cloudy, sort of wavy effect with a bit of almost blue Petri in the background. So it has worked in some respects. It's just that white glow in the dark didn't seem to work. Probably didn't add enough alcohol. And again, I personally don't think these are going to light up in the dark, but I'm hoping to be proved wrong. And again, the next two of those domes, you can see the Petri effect just poking through in the background, which is great. But the blobbing from the white has kind of ruined the effect. But do you know what? I still like them. I think it's almost a cloudy sort of wavy effect. It just wasn't the effect we were actually going for. So, but I've learnt not everything in epoxy goes right. This is one where actually the purples have blobbed a little bit. And it's a shame because you can just see underneath the Petri that we tried to do, the sort of cloudy Petri effect, seemed to have worked. So I think it's just a case of taking more time when I'm mixing the thicker pigments, adding more alcohol until we get it right. Again, some nice pieces, but it's almost got sort of a cloudy blobbing effect that's happened, which, again, looking at the front of the mould, I'm not completely surprised at. But they're still lovely pieces in their own right. It just wasn't the effect that we were trying to get. There you go. You can see the blobbing actually through with the white there through that little window. And I think when I try this again, I'm going to try and add even more alcohol. I thought 15, 20 drops would be enough, but I think these pigments are particularly heavy. And the glow in the dark element, what we were trying to get, maybe you can't actually get that effect with those, I don't know.
But again, you can see in the background almost that ribbon Petri effect, which is really, really nice. And it's just these white blobs that I suppose have ruined it. But again, if they light up in the dark, it will still be a really cool effect. And again, that one's amazing. It's almost like a velvety ribbon in the background. And I suppose if I was going for a cloud effect, these white blobs actually look pretty good. Right, last four now. And I absolutely love these. Again, it's not the effect that we went for, but it's almost like a storm, I would say, in a pendant, which is pretty cool in its own right. So if you're looking to make a storm pendant, watch the video back. But I think for the effect that I was going for, and again, these ovals, I absolutely love. You know, it's like a full storm in a pendant. It's almost like you've got the Petri effect on the bluey purples, which is your waves, and then you've got the white blobby clouds, if you like, above it. So it's almost like a full storm in a pendant. So let me know what you think in comments, guys. It wasn't the effect that we went for. I will take another video later on in the pitch black and see if these do glow in the dark. But instead of the Petri effect, the cloudy Petri effect that we were going for, I actually really, these are growing on me. I think it is pretty much a storm inside a pendant, you know? And actually, it's probably quite hard to recreate, but you know, with epoxy, I think some of your mistakes become your nicest pieces. And look at that. I mean, that is like, you've almost got the clouds of a storm in the sky. And then if you look into it deeper, you see the almost the waves at the bottom. And again, these hearts, love the effect it came out with. It just wasn't the one that we wanted to go for. And you can just make out in the background the Petri on them. So it did kind of work. But I think it was the heaviness of that white glow-in-the-dark pigment that we didn't, well, that I didn't sort of mix enough alcohol into, that stopped it working. But again, I'll take another video later in the dark and let you know if they do glow in the dark. But it's not a complete failure because I actually really like the finished product. So if you want to know how to make a storm in a pendant, this is how. But hopefully see you on the next one.